calling all those who have changed their names, this is a story for you. If you're someone who goes by your middle name, this is a story for you. If you go by a nickname, this is a story for you. If you changed your name to reflect a new gender, this story is for you. If you're in productive services and you changed your name, if you dislike the spelling and you changed your name, if you moved to a new country and you changed your name, if people kept mispronouncing it so you changed your name, if you got married and you changed your name, if you felt like a change so you changed your name, this story is for you. While the issue of changing names is being used today as a political pawn, there is nothing new or unusual about changing your name. It has happened since the beginning, and we see it in the Bible. Today's reading is from Genesis, and it's about Abraham and Sarai changing their names. The meaning behind names was incredibly important then, so a change in your name reflected a major change in your persona, in who you are. Jacob becomes Israel, Simon becomes Peter, Saul becomes Paul. It marks a milestone, a change in direction. So what changed for Abraham and Sarah? Why the name change now? In the story of Abraham, there are many points where God calls Abraham out and makes a covenant with him. God calls Abraham and Sarai out of their homeland. God calls them out of Egypt. God guides them through Canaan. Many times, God repeats a covenant, a promise, to be with Abraham and Sarai, to bless them, to make their descendants as plentiful as the stars in the sky. They believe this promise, they follow, but they don't know exactly how it's going to happen. Abraham and Sarai don't have children, and they're getting pretty old. They decided that if the promise is going to come true, well, they're going to have to be a little proactive. Someone must have whispered in their ear, God helps those who help themselves. That's not a Bible verse, by the way, and as you'll see in this story, not a sentiment that God agrees with. Abraham and Sarai decide to use Hagar as a surrogate. Hagar, being the maidservant of Sarai, has no choice about this, and she gives birth to Ishmael. Hagar is mistreated and runs away, where God then makes a separate covenant with her. But this is the turning point for Abraham and Sarai. For years, they tried to have a child. They did everything in their power to have a child. And when it seemed like nothing would work, they even exploited another person in order to have a child. This is how desperate they were to make it happen. And here, in today's reading, is the moment that they give up. I spoke last week about how Lent is a season of failing, a time where we practice being failures. And I'm sure Abraham and Sarai felt like failures here. They spent their life convinced that God would bless them with children. They moved countries because of this promise. They boasted about it, I'm sure, to everyone. But nothing happened. They grew older, and the promises didn't seem to be any closer. They would have been so embarrassed. And then when they take matters into their own hands, they do something worse than embarrassing. They act shamefully. We might want to point our fingers at Abraham and Sarai for the way that they treated Hagar. But let the one cast without sin cast the first stone. When we are desperate, when we're failing, we're tempted to act in ways that shame us. I can certainly relate to the shame Abraham and Sarai might be facing right now. It is in this moment, into this feeling of failure, that God comes and makes another covenant with them. It is now, after they have tried to do everything to make the promises come true, it is now that God repeats, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you. Just when they feel like complete failures, God says, I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will make you exceedingly numerous. It's like God waited for them to try everything, waited for them to exhaust their options, waited for this moment when they finally gave up. God needed them to fail because this is the turning point. It's the moment they realize who they are really meant to be. And so they get a new name. In your old life, you'd like to be in control. Abram and Sarai were successful with many fields and flocks. Abram and Sarai negotiated with kings and pharaohs. Abram and Sarai lived powerful lives where they controlled the people around them, including handmaids like Hagar. In everything else, they were a success. But now, that old persona is gone. This is the moment they accept that they're not as in control as they thought they would be. Abraham and Sarai were in control, but the new Abraham and Sarah are different people. Abraham and Sarah will accept that they can't manipulate the situation. They can't force destiny. Abraham and Sarah acknowledge that the future isn't in their hands. Abraham and Sarah accept where they are and trust that God will lead them from here. If the promise happens, it won't be because of anything they did. If the promise happens, they won't even be around to see it. Let the world think that Abraham and Sarai failed. Abraham and Sarah don't care. They're done caring what the world thinks. From this point on, they really learn what it means to trust God. That deserves a new name, doesn't it? Such a radical shift in their spiritual life needs to be named. The new name is a promise to live differently, to be different. It is the hope that failures shape us but never define us, that our past does not dictate our future, that in God, all possibilities are possible. It's a reminder that I don't have to be who I was just because I spent a long time being that person. I can change. Life can change. Praise be to God who changes us. And blessings to all of you who have changed your name. Amen.